So just quick introduction to myself, Pork Mannion. I'm the UX design lead in Watson Health Innovations Mobile out in Damastown. And today I want to talk around cognitive design frameworks. So a quick overview of what we do in Watson Health. So this is the tagline for Watson Health. So the vision of Watson Health is to serve as a catalyst to save and improve lives around the world at lower cost through cognitive computing. So a huge emphasis in the work that we do is around cognitive computing. I was talking to someone last night and I said my talk would be around cognitive products, and he said, "Do you work for IBM?" I said, "I do." it's the word that's really heavily used, but it's really embraced, but obviously it represents machine learning, AI, analytics. A lot of these things have been kind of grouped together in a bundle and referred to as being cognitive. But it's something that I've been working really heavily on for the last year and something I'm really passionate about. But what I've found is that it's quite unique in the challenges that it presents. And what I've been trying to do for the last year is really come up with a way of approaching it myself, and our teams, and also the different disciplines that we're working across. So it's not just UX, UI, front-end, back-end. There's researchers, there's a lot of different moving parts that really go into building out a truly cognitive product. So what I was trying to build out is a process framework. So quick show of hands in the room, actually. How many designers here today? So I can see the IBMers and the speakers. And then, so data scientists, engineers, a lot of engineers, CEOs, directors, that kind of stuff. Excellent. So a nice mix. So I'm sure everyone's worked with some process framework in the past. So when I first set up my first company a long time ago now, we came across the Agile framework, and this was fantastic at the time. We'd been kind of coming into it, and obviously a lot of the engineers and people tend to fall into waterfall because it seems like an obvious thing. You get a Gantt chart and you start, and you kind of step down, then it's done. Seems obvious. What could possibly go wrong? And the guys that came up with the Agile Manifesto spotted that actually everything can go wrong. In fact, everything will go wrong. Stop trying to pretend like it won't go wrong, and start using these really short iterative cycles and sprints and introducing it. And that was a really great way of communicating a concept across an entire industry and saying, let's think differently, but let's simplify it and approach it as a group in that way. The same thing when I in my agency and before going into my startup, I came across Eric Ries and a group of guys that were promoting this idea of the lean startup. So obviously it was an extension from Lean and Toyota and Six Sigma, but they really, really simplified it down to really basic principles of learn, build, measure. Kind of cycling through those processes, and you had this amazing wave of really early stage companies that were able to take on this framework and do amazing work through it. And of course you have IBM and IBM Design with our Observe, Reflect and Make. So this is something that within IBM they've been using to bring design thinking and push it through the 400,000 person organization that IBM is. And it's a massive challenge, but I've seen huge results come from it. And myself, when I came on board, I was just really impressed with how all the teams understand the basics of design thinking and are really embracing it. I think the design framework and how they're promoting it is a really good example of that. So again, designing for cognitive, why is this different? So there's a few things that I notice when approaching these challenges, and the best way that I have to describe it is really through an analogy, and that is the analogy of the man in the moon. So most people, when they're interacting with technology, they fall victim to something which is very natural, in that if it starts to show human characteristics, we project human characteristics. Same as for generations, people would have looked up in the sky, saw a giant object that's obviously not human. I think I kind of see eyes. Oh yeah, that's a face. That's a man. Cool, it's a man. And he's responsible for, I don't know, my crops. All of a sudden we're projecting and we're anthropomorphizing things that are absolutely not human, but because they show a glimmer of humanity, we start to project that humanity onto them. And that's been really well described in a study done by a guy called Byron Reeves and Clifford Nass in Stanford called the media equation. And what they did is they started to notice that people, individuals, interacted with technology on a very social and natural way. So the one-liners, individuals' interactions with technology are fundamentally social and fundamentally natural in the sense that when we interact with technology, it actually disappears. And we start to interact with it as if it's not technology, and in fact that it is a completely normal situation that you would have with the person or in the real world. So even though we might think we're very removed or it's a very special context, it's not at all. So how did they experiment or prove this out? So what they did was they actually stepped out of the world of technology and talking about computers and decided to take a leaf out of Picasso's book and steal all the work that was being done in social science. So instead of going off spending money and resources actually running experiments, they went into social sciences, into the libraries, and they took statements like people that flatter them and said, well, we have an idea. People act computers exactly like they would with other people. So what about we just remove the word people and replace it with computers? Hey, excellent, it's proved out. But instead of doing that, instead of stopping there, what they did is they went in and instead of running the social experiments that the people in social sciences would have spent decades and lots of money developing, and they just started swapping out the human components with computer components. So disclosure reciprocity, do people understand this concept? If I disclose something to you guys, you'll be more inclined to reciprocate and to disclose something to me. Like if I wanted to share something embarrassing, like this one time I was going to present to the conference and I rushed up on stage about 3 minutes too early and I had to listen to my entire bio, you'd probably reciprocate and say something that would suitably or similarly embarrassing. So what they did in the experiments was they had the computers say something embarrassing, like sometimes I crash at inopportune times, often when a person really needs to get their work done, tell me your most embarrassing moments. Now this is the machine saying, hey, I'm not perfect, tell me about yourself, you're also not perfect. And people were reacting to it as if it was a human, and they're actually going along with it. So that's really important to know, because what it's showing is that technology has the ability to leverage and manipulate social science exactly like people do. So a really good speaker, a really good motivator, a really good leader has the ability to do huge things with humans. Technology has the exact same opportunity if they do the exact same things, because people will react to it, as proven by social science in the exact same way. And interesting, they'll do some of the negative things as well. So a study done in 2002 showed that people were less polite with less performant technologies. So I thought it was really funny that they will behave and show great respect and reciprocate with technology they believe to be really powerful. But similarly, they'll be disrespectful to technology they don't think is really powerful. So if you have your brand new iPhone and you're kind of drooling over it and it's amazing and you're pouring all your personal details into it and just ticking agree to everything it asks you, and then you'll turn around and you'll have the second-class citizen PC laptop you got 7 years ago and you're kind of disrespecting it, kind of kicking it to the curb. So what is the framework then we can apply to it? And this is something I've been trying to do myself and within my team to understand how we can start building out really powerful cognitive products. So obviously there's different relationships people can have. I'm not going to focus on personal, I'll leave that to someone else, and instead focus on the professional relationships. And this is really about the jobs people do and the relationship you'll have with someone in the professional environment. So has anybody here been responsible for hiring in the past? A couple of hands, great. If I was to say to you, go out and hire somebody for your company, there's probably a few questions you'd have. And one of them is probably like, well, what is the role that I should be hiring them for? What goals are they going to have and what actions are going to be partaken? And this is exactly what I'm suggesting for designing cognitive services, is that we don't jump in, we're not just trying to apply, like people did in the 90s to web services, apply a kind of veneer of the print design but in the web context. So we're not just trying to add visuals or kind of visualize the data that's coming out of it. We need to be able to take a step back and understand, well, why have we got machine learning or AI in this situation? Why have we taken this into our organization? What are the goals and what are the actions they can take? So I'm going to run through this really quickly. So again, the role in the organization is probably one of the most critical things, because before you decide what the role is, you need to know, well, what is my business opportunity? Like, how does our organization address that business opportunity? And then within our company, what is the gap that we have? Because if we don't understand our business opportunity, well, we've got bigger problems. Let's not start designing machine learning. And if we don't have a gap in our team, then maybe we don't have the need to bring in cognitive services. There's a paper called Machine Learning, the High Interest Credit Card of Technical Debt, written by the guys in Google a few years ago. And it talks about the fact that as soon as you introduce machine learning, all of a sudden you bring this massive load of code that has huge complications to create, to maintain, and to really get any value from. So before you do that, just think about, well, should we be doing this at all? Where should this be? Where is there a gap in our organization that would be appropriate to fill with the use of machine learning or AI? Some of the artifacts that I found to be very useful in that is the service blueprint. Now, there's, again, a few designers in here that would have seen this, but a quick explanation on service blueprints. Service blueprints are used in the service design industry, and a really quick kind of whistle-stop tour of it. There's a line below the yellow lines are talking about everything that a customer will interact with. So it's their actions if they're interacting with people in a company, so support staff, human beings, and touch points. So let's say in a banking situation, that's the user goes into a bank, they go to a desk or a kiosk, and they interact with a teller. Below the line, we have backstage elements. The people might be in the back, running around, carrying bags of cash, and there could be some technical elements going around, keeping track of all their money and their data. Currently, a lot of the AI and cognitive services are kind of surfaced as a very light touch point, so there's a very small exposure to it, and most of it's happening in the background. And what I'm saying is the potential that AI and cognitive services have is to actually move up a layer into the support team, so we're actually taking on a far more robust role in the organization and being more present and actually leveraging some of the opportunities that we have and that have been drawn out when we're talking about the media equation. So goals. If you bring somebody into an organization, the first thing you need to do is identify their role and then say, well, what are your goals? What is success to you? And obviously every different organization and every different role will have different forms of success. But how do we decide that within a design team, if we've crafted out this area that we say, well, we want our cognitive services to work here, how do we talk about goals? And we actually do this, and we've been doing it for a long time in the design space, around personas. We've tried to understand, well, what are our users and what are their goals and what are they trying to achieve? And what's really interesting is when we have the opportunity to kind of flip that on its head and say, well, we're technically creating something that we're saying will start thinking and taking actions themselves. So how can we define their goals? And something I've used and we found to be very useful is actually to create a persona for the service. Now, this is not a product that we've been building ourselves. This is Slackbot. People in this room use Slack. Good. This is Slackbot. I thought it would just be fun to create a persona for Slackbot. Obviously, not all cognitive services or AI will have a human face to it, but I thought it would be very interesting to just kind of call out some of the goals that this particular service has. And that's been really important to understand, okay, if we're in this space and I need to do these things, what is success? And this is a really good artifact to do that. And next are their actions. So the actions are what people typically rush to, like what do they do? What does it look like? What do people see? And it's really important because, again, it's what people see and it's what we do. But in designing this, I think once we've got the kind of backup of the roles and goals, this is really powerful, but this is also where we expose ourselves most. So this is Inbox, and you can see where they've exposed some of their cognitive services are the ability to do a really quick reply. And in this, you've seen where they've given them very specific actions. So present really short replies that people can just touch on to send a reply. But what they've had to address is permission. So permission to do certain things. You're giving them an action, but you need to be very careful because if you ask somebody to do something, you can create what's called the sorcerer's apprentice effect. And this is where the guys in X.AI, they're building a product called Amy. It's a cognitive service to organize meetings. You CC them on an email and they'll actually set up a meeting for you. But what he's called out is this sorcerer's apprentice effect, which is when you ask a cognitive service to do something, they will just do exactly that. So they might ask them, oh, set up a meeting between me and Tom tomorrow. Great, email Tom, hey, can you meet Pork tomorrow? Sure. time they can get back. And then Amy just starts spamming and going crazy and emailing them 100 times until eventually says, no, I can't meet for work tomorrow. They've gone overboard and they've done too much. So similarly here, we have the replies could be, oh, I'm going to have a Thanksgiving dinner. Do you want to come? First one, no, count us in. Second one, oh, we'll be there. And third one is, sorry, I don't like you. So obviously this is where we'll be overstepping the boundaries, even though you might not like them, and Google might have been able to pick this up because of the patterns, but you need to set boundaries and really identify permission. So a few last things to really consider. When you've identified what they can do, also consider the fact that those actions are what people will really kind of experience from the media creation point of view. So if you create a situation where the cognitive service is giving people information, and you then define, well, I'm going to kind of set really clear boundaries. What if one day it decides, well, I'm not going to give them any suggestions or any recommendations or anything at all, and just gives them the silent treatment? Like, how do you think that your users will feel if you just don't tell them anything? They'll kind of start reacting to, well, is it something I said? Was it something I did? Maybe this is stupid. Maybe this is just not a good, clever piece of cognitive services. And similarly, we need to consider the failure tolerance. And failure tolerance, I think, is really, really critical when we're talking about cognitive services, because we're wading into very dangerous waters. We're saying that we can leverage and harness the power of social sciences and get a lot of stuff done by kind of stepping into this human sphere, and that's dangerous, because what happens is a lot of the time there's very low affordance, as in there's very low ability to communicate exactly what cognitive services can and can't do. A really good example of it being Siri. So Siri was marketed as being this amazing assistant. Just talk to it, it'll sort it out, don't worry about it. We've all seen the ads. I did a study during the year where I asked people to kind of test it out and see how they could use it. And generally, they didn't know how to use it at the start. I gave them some tasks. Their skill level spiked up. This is brilliant. And I asked them to do a few more things. And really quickly, it either plateaued or just completely dropped off. And when talking to them, they described it as being, well, I thought she was this person who could do some really basic things, but as I started to ask her to do more basic things, she couldn't even do that, so she's kind of stupid, so I'm just not going to use her. And she had very low failure tolerance, whereas Google, you could see, had a really, really good one, because you could just not use the suggestions, nobody gets upset. So that's really, really critical, considering when we're trying to leverage the power of it, that we don't actually go too far and try to oversell what we're presenting to our users. So that's me, that's my talk. Thanks very much for your time. When you're designing services, don't design AI, hire someone and give them roles, goals, and actions. Thanks very much.
Thanks. I just have one wee question. So yeah, as a designer, I kind of have a selfish question. Is there anybody, does it exist, a style guide for cognitive? Is anybody trying to make one? Do IBM have one? Are you ever going to release it? Because there's so much great information out there, and often the stuff at some point in the evolution ends up in a style guide.
Yeah, and I think style guides it's a good question. Style guides are often very company specific. So IBM is developing a Watson style guide, but I don't think it'd be fair to call it a cognitive style guide. It'd be like saying a UX style guide, whereas it's not. Like, cognitive is a grouping of technology. And I think different companies are leveraging it differently. And it's a green field. At this stage now, there's a huge amount of potential. It'd be like saying style guide for mobile or web. There's different elements that really work. People are discovering it, but there's no definitive right or wrong way just yet. I mean, I think the reason why I'm really excited about it is that we're now at the start where design is really stepping in and talking with researchers and lots of companies and startups using it. But in the next 5 years, everyone's going to need to know how to do this, and everyone's going to be interacting and touching with it in some way. So it doesn't exist yet, but it'd be really great to talk to everybody here and more designers about that.
Great talk.
Thanks very much.
Thanks,
Cheers. Thank you.